So let me ask you a question. Mike Tyson is going to be fighting Jake Paul. Um, what do you think about that? Do you think? I mean, a lot of people have been asking if is Tyson going to have? Because for me, it's more of a mentality thing, and I think Mike Tyson is one of those guys that just is a born warrior. I think that he believes that he can come out and have a great showing. Um, but what do you think of it?
Well, I actually really wanted these two guys to fight each other for about a year or so now, but just things kind of got in the way, which prevented them from meeting each other. But I'm glad that this fight is going to happen July 20th at what is it, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, Arlington, Texas. Um, I mean, to see like a name like Mike Tyson and Jake Paul has been kind of like fighting guys who either were MMA guys or somewhat boxers, but it's kind of nice to see like a name out there. Now, granted, there's a big age difference, and Tyson is way past his prime, of course. But I am wanting to watch this because I am curious about how this would actually play out. Um, you've seen some videos where Mike Tyson has been sparring and like just kind of show, some flashes of what he used to be, right? But
Mhm.
I do feel that I get the feeling that Jake Paul might make this an interesting fight, but I still feel that Mike Tyson will actually show us something and we actually might get that knockout that everyone has been waiting.
Right. So, I mean, you say that this is something that you've been like waiting for a year. Um, why have you been waiting for it for a year? I don't even know of Mike Tyson being in talks of like it being something that was talked about around the water cooler for Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul. So where in your mind, the illustrious mind that is Tiki Max, was there ever even a thought that, hey, Mike Tyson might fight Jake Paul and have the chance to knock Jake Paul out?
Well, it wasn't really too long ago that I actually kind of heard, and then there were some talks, but sometimes when talks between fighters kind of fall through, it happens a lot. Yeah, because you do see that Jake Paul, he's just like, you know, YouTube sensation. At first, people didn't really take him that seriously because he wants to do a lot of like celebrity boxing fights, but then like it's just that he kept winning these fights, and all of a sudden he's then crossing over and he's fighting these MMA guys, and he's winning those fights too. And like, I myself, I really want him to like really lose or someone to knock out his lights. But it's just that I'm an addict to kind of want to see something like that. And I'm not getting it right away, but then him winning kind of adds fuel to the fire and then, bring up the next guy.
You said that so Tyson is older, right? 57 years of age. And I
Yep.
think the biggest thing for me is when it comes to these guys who are, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're at the point of where you're charging for a pay-per-view is the only thing that really matters for me. Um, any two idiots can go into a backyard and throw punches. And I think the thing is like once you get to a point where you're charging people for something, it needs to be serious to a certain degree. Only
I
because, and
agree.
I say that because there are guys who are like they're talking about how Jake Paul is selling snake oil, and there's a part of me who's like, well, if he's going out and he's giving the best version of himself he can give in boxing, then if people are willing to pay for pay-per-view to watch that, then that is their choice. And you can try to sway the people any which direction you want, eventually they're going to make their choice. But I don't think that what he's doing is necessarily wrong, as long as he's going out there trying to give a show and he's given the best of himself. And that's where I have the same issue with a guy like Mike Tyson. At 57 years of age, and you're going out and I'm sorry, because this is not a pay-per-view, right? Like like you've already stated, this is going to, well, technically you are still paying for a product, right? If you have Netflix, you are paying a monthly fee in order to be a subscriber, which is getting you the product that they're having on that night for free, but still technically you are paying in some way, shape, or form. And my thing is if these guys go out, and it's the same thing whether you're 57 or you're 28 years old, I say that you should always be coming out to give the best version of you, right? And so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. If a guy comes out and he's 192 and he comes out and he bobs and weaves and floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee, then it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter, right? The age isn't the thing. It's about, what are you bringing to the table? And we're seeing a lot of video where he is, seemingly doing work. He is putting work in. He is hitting the
Oh
heavy
yeah.
bag and he's hitting it hard. He's doing pad work and he's looking good. And I've even seen some footage of him doing his weight training and whatnot, and it seems like he's doing it in a very scientific way to get him the best results. So to go off of what you said, and then I'd like you to expand on that a little bit, and I'd like to just get a quick take of what you think of this. Jake Paul is putting on fights. I don't know how much relevance I give to some of the fights he's had in the past, or even with, the UFC fighters that you bring over. Are they fun? Are they quirky? Yes, I'll give you that. But what are you really doing when you're taking guys and you're taking them from their natural form of fighting, bringing them over to boxing? And a lot of these guys are obviously, we know, they'll say over and over again, they're past their prime, they're on losing streaks, whatever. But the simplest thing is, you're taking guys out of their natural selection, which I want to also expand on when we get to talking about Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz. But tell me
Mm.
quickly, 57-year-old Mike Tyson, what do you think that he is going to be a, we know that he is not going to be the Mike Tyson of old. That's just common sense. But do you think that he will on the night be a guy worth walking out to the ring and for people to want to get on Netflix and check him out?
I think it'll be worth it just to kind of see how this is really gonna be played out because it just like has a lot of like question marks as to what kind of fight are we gonna get? And I am like curious. And curiosity does draw in attention.
Jake Paul, how much relevance do you give to the fighters that he's been fighting, whether it be celebrity basketball players or former football players or UFC fighters that were either on severe losing streaks or just at the tail end of any type of fighting career? How much relevance do you give? Do you think that Jake Paul is uh, anywhere among the talk of even being we're not even talking elite boxer. We're talking about, do we consider him to be a professional boxer?
Uh, Honestly, he's still kind of below the level where a professional boxer would be at because I've seen his other fights and it did seem like, yeah, you can have easy tape there to see like how you would really box Jake Paul if you were a full-time boxer. But when you kind of have other disciplines that you've been working on and you don't do boxing full time. Um, and then you get restricted to only just do boxing. I mean, you'll see sometimes MMA fighters still have that natural inclination to kind of do some MMA moves, but you have to really refrain from doing it because you know that can result in disqualification because it was not what you agreed to. But it's just hard to get away from something you've been so natural good at. But
Right. That is
um,
true. But the question I have for you is, do you give relevance to the fights that he's had in the past? So do those fights mean anything to you? The ones against the celebrities, the ones against, I mean, as far as like people want to know, should Jake Paul be considered a real boxer? Do you give him do you think he's a real boxer?
I wouldn't say a real boxer. But just to see names put together inside a boxing ring and just see them kind of just duke it out. I mean, for me, that checks a lot of boxes for me because, you know, I like to see an interesting, entertaining fight. It doesn't have to be like a championship fight all the time. I mean, like, I'm just kind of curious.
You know, they're saying that this is Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz too. And while this is going to be their second fight, it is almost irritating in a certain way because, again, while they are fighting for the second time, this isn't and I guess you can say it's just two because it's their second fight, you know, but we're going from MMA rules to strictly boxing rules. And I haven't heard much in the way of how many rounds it's going to be or what type of gloves, how heavy the gloves are going to be. But quickly let me know how you think a boxing match between Jorge Masvidal, Gamebred, versus Nate Diaz goes.
It will be a very interesting fight. Um, I would still kind of give the nod to Jorge Masvidal because, for some strange reason, if you do just make this a purely a boxing match, like I can see him pretty much win the fight against Nate Diaz. And I don't know what it is about Nate Diaz and his fight, because like there's something about it where if he doesn't get off to a hot start with the boxing, like I feel that he's just gonna wait for you to get tired as the fight goes on, and like you're kind of losing points as you're waiting for that game plan to really be implemented. And I don't like that because like you should be ready to go from the start, and you should plan as each round goes by, and you shouldn't have to wait for you to do your strengths into a fight because like you know sometimes you hear ideas if it's like a long fight it would probably favor him, but that also tells me that maybe he's just not going to simply go 100% for the first like few rounds and like you're waiting for him to start to turn it up, while other fighters they would just simply just take advantage of that by just simply scoring the points early on and actually try to keep that pace up. And you're waiting for Nate to kind of do what he was supposed to do, but then all of a sudden Nate's already fallen behind.
I think I think you're right. I think that there are plenty of times where Nate Diaz has
I hate
had
that.
you, yeah, I know, I get it, but you know, there's been plenty of times where you know it's like even against Leon Edwards, it was like, dude, like he had Leon Edwards hurt, and you know that if that
You
was
waited
ever a
20
fight for
minutes for that.
title. Right.
20
If that
minutes you
was
have to
ever a
wait for
fight for
that.
title contention, you know, that was definitely it, right? And it was like
Yeah.
he had the chance to um you know put himself within the realm of, you know, maybe fighting for a belt. I don't know if the UFC ever really wanted to see Nate Diaz fight for a belt, but you know, that was ever if ever a fight, that was it. You know, the one thing I will say, because I think that you know, you are bringing up, you know, an opponent getting ahead on Nate Diaz, and Nothing more stands out to me than the BMF title that he fought for against Jorge Masvidal. And the thing that was crazy about that was right before the doctor stoppage, I truly felt like you could see the tide turning, especially with the jiu-jitsu right before that round was over. And I felt like Jorge Masvidal was going to be in a world of pain or in for a world of pain come the next round. And, here comes the doctor stoppage. Now, again, Jorge Masvidal was teeing off on Nate Diaz, and
Oh
it
yeah,
was looking too easy. So going into a boxing match, that worries me because look at in MMA, Jorge Masvidal's already teeing off on him, right? I mean, he made those what was it the first 3 rounds look fairly simple,
yeah.
and then Nate Diaz goes out and he fights Jake Paul, and that is a strictly boxing match and Nate doesn't look great. Okay. So then it really worries me that now you're going to get a guy who is a mental killer like Jorge Masvidal, who's going to be wearing those gloves and he's going to be sitting behind those punches, not a Jake Paul. And that the outcome could be very different. And it just really, I beg the question of, is he going to take the camp seriously? Is he going to take this fight seriously? Because if not, then we can see a very devastated Nate Diaz come that fight night. Um,
For
did you have
sure.
any last words about Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal?
Honestly, I don't see much difference in the rematch. Like I will probably will start seeing them. Jorge Masvidal will probably start not only collect on points and stuff, but like he'll probably be a very decisive winner in that fight, whether it be by finish or just simply by points, though. I mean, it will be an entertaining fight, and again, I am very curious, and I'm gonna be bought into watching it, but there's just something about Nate Diaz that I just simply don't like, and it's just that there's a reason why he has a lot of losses on his record, and that was just purely for just from MMA. And the fact that he already lost his boxing debut to Jake Paul and stuff, I don't think is going to look too good for Nate Diaz. But I would say the lead up, like just simply like him talking, like that will probably get people to watch even more than what they were already going to
Mm-hmm.
do anyway. But like it'll just make for an interesting fight. And for me, I like to see it, but I kind of get a feeling of how this is going to turn out, and I will be picking Jorge Masvidal to win the fight.
The Nate Diaz army is very deep. And I just have to go. I have to say the same, Tony. I agree with you. I think that when we look at the striking difference from the BMF title, uh, you know how well and how much more Jorge Masvidal outstruck Nate Diaz, and now to think that this is going to be in boxing, I agree, and I am going to go with Jorge Masvidal on that one as well. So we have UFC 300, okay? And I just really want to go, because we're going to talk about again this probably, in much more detail pretty soon. But are there any? I mean, this is a fight card that is just trued up with champions and people who will be fighting for title contention within the next year or two. So it is full of the top echelon of the UFC. But are there any particular fights that really stand out to you here?
Well, the first thing I'll probably say will be the main event, honestly. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. It is a fight that's been in the works. You've gotten to see Alex Pereira just tearing through competition in just a short amount of time. I'm impressed. He transitioned pretty well. And you got Jamal Hill, who he technically didn't lose the title. It was just by injury. And, did a great thing, gave up the title, but now he gets to fight for that title and take it back. And the fact that they are both in their prime, I love it. I can't wait to see this fight. Um, Honestly, I'm leaning towards picking Alex Pereira to win this one and just continue his barrage on the UFC.
Um, that's a good pick. I'm going with Jamal Hill.
Hmm.
And the reason why I'm going with Jamal Hill is because, and even though he says, I'm not going to take this down to the ground. I'm going to keep this standing. I am I'm going to show the Alex Pereira fans, the kickboxing fans, the people who say that there's no way that a Jamal Hill even stands on the same court as Alex Pereira. I'm going to not only show and prove you wrong, I'm going to rub it in your face once it's done. And there's nothing more exciting than when you get these rivalries, because again, it's not getting nasty. It's not, we're not getting into talking about people's wives and whatnot. For the most part, it's true competition, but it's respectful. It's really interesting when you see a guy and you can tell that some of the comments, some of the things are starting to get under his skin, because again, this is when you sometimes get the best of the best. I mean, how are you going to react to it? Is it going to be so in your head that you do not perform well? Is it going to be something that you use as fuel for the fire? And then once you do get that win, it leads to a spectacular showing after. Think of Izzy versus Paulo Costa. You think about, Conor McGregor when he got the second belt, and knowing that the champ apologizes to absolutely nobody. Again, these are the things that we watch for, right? But I do think that Jamal Hill, I mean, we know how Alex Pereira hits. And I think sometimes there are guys who have very specific specialties that even if your game plan is one thing, it may switch up. I do see there could be a point at which Jamal Hill needs to switch up his game plan inside of the octagon. But the difference is that Jamal Hill has the ability to, if he needs to, where Alex, if it's not working on the feet, he's in deep trouble.
I
Um,
agree. I agree.
so, so I think some of those the honorable mentions, and we will be going into more detail very soon. Listen, Zhang Wei Li. Oh my goodness, she is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I've never seen a fight that she's been in where I felt like she didn't bring it. And she's not always been on the winning end of that, bringing it, but she's always brought it. And I think that there is not enough credit due to some of the women in the game. But take that out of it. Just as a fighter, she is always exciting to watch, and she devastates her opponents. We don't need to go into people with welts the size of small moons on their forehead at the end of fights. She is a power puncher. She strikes in bunches. She is very good. But Yan Xiaonan, the last time I saw her fight, I picked her to win, and I think she won with a punch to the gut. I think it was a liver shot. I don't remember exactly, but I can tell you this: it's going to be fireworks. There's a reason why, literally, this is the co-main event. It deserves to be a co-main event, and I'm glad that they placed it there, because these are two women who do bring it. I know for sure Wei Li is going to bring it. Justin Gaethje, Holloway. Who do you have, bro?
Mm, that for the BMF championship, this is gonna be fireworks. Because for one, it's gonna stay standing for what is it gonna be 15 minutes or are they gonna do 25? Because I wouldn't mind seeing 25 actually, of seeing them strike
I
for
don't think they're
like,
doing 25 though.
well, if it's just 15, you'll probably still see like 300 strikes either combined or each. And like I wouldn't put it past them if they could do 300 strikes on each other for 15 minutes. But it's gonna be a fun fight. That'll be a nice uh, appetizer to the two championship bouts that would follow those two. But honestly, I get a feeling that Justin Gaethje might pull out as the victor in this one, and it might be easily considered fight of the night, actually.
I think, I mean, look at, there is definitely a high chance, a high probability that that fight is fight of the night. And there is a high chance and a high probability that you see a very unconscious version of Max Holloway come the end of that fight. Now, this is a hard fight for me to choose a winner, and we aren't going to even choose a winner yet. That is going to be on the next segment. We will get to that. So make sure that if you have not subscribed, you have not rang that bell, make sure you do that. And if you like the crazy talk from the guys at the Who Are They podcast, your boy D2 and Tiggy Max, make sure you are hitting the like bell. Let us know your thoughts. If you dislike, go ahead, let us know your thoughts. But just know if you come for us in the comments, you better come correct. But here's the thing. I think that that'll definitely be an exciting fight. I just think that the way that Gaethje hits, he can put anyone's lights out. And then you have a guy
Oh
who's
yeah.
coming down,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
or coming up in weight. Are you going to be prepared for that? Now, Max Holloway is a warrior, and I don't think that he easily goes out. I think he can win this fight. It'll be interesting to see what kind of power he brings because he is coming up in weight, and we'll see
Yeah.
if that translates to any aspect, right? So
Yeah.
I am very excited about that fight. But I think, guys, we are going to leave it there. We will be adding another video very soon. So please make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment. Leave it down below. Let us know what you think. Who do you have winning UFC on the card in the UFC 300 event? Who do you think is more right when it comes to Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul and Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz? And do you agree with Tiggy or D2 when it comes to the main event and Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill? Who ends up on the mat, unconscious, eyes closed, rolled in the back of their head, come fight night? And we're out.